and let's get rolling. So I'm going to start with our very first presenter and speaker, and also somebody that is very influential here in the Chicago market, maybe the most influential agent, honestly, as far as single individual agent. I say that not just because she's here, but I actually believe it. And Kiki, actually, when we got on, I don't know if everyone heard this, but she's one of our speakers today too. She's actually going to be getting coached. But she said, "Oh my gosh, Carrie McCormick, I haven't met you, but I'm a huge follower of her." So everyone is a big follower of this person, of Carrie. So I am so honored to have her. She has been not only an amazing, influential person here in Chicago, she's a top producer, but she has been a huge friend to our show. When I first started the show and didn't have any listeners, Carrie said, "I want to be a part of this." And she has been a part of this for as many years as I've had it. So 7 years, maybe 6, 7 years. And she comes on every month. We're so grateful. And she is going to be doing more regular episodes. So she'll be on every month talking about how she grew her business and advice she has for agents. And boy, this is a person that just doesn't have time to do this, and she makes time for us. So we're super honored to have her. This is a very important thing, very important person for us here on our show. And we are huge fans of Carrie's. But let me tell you about Carrie McCormick if you aren't yet familiar. She is, by the way, with At Properties Christie's International here in Chicago. She is, for over 2 decades, Carrie McCormick has defined excellence in Chicago's real estate market, setting the gold standard across all neighborhoods and price points, with an extraordinary career surpassing 2.2 billion in sales, including an impressive 200 million in production alone in 2024. Last year, doing 200 million. That is incredible. That was maybe the hardest year. It was the lowest year in 30 years for home sales, and Carrie still crushed 200 million. That's pretty awesome. She's more than a top producer, though. She is, first of all, a friend to our show. She's a total visionary and leader, and just a force to be reckoned with, and also one of the nicest people you could ever meet, honestly. So this is somebody who should have a gigantic ego, and she just doesn't. And I think that is something that is really a hallmark of my favorite people in this industry, top superstars who are approachable and sweet and kind. And Carrie is absolutely all of those things. So I want everybody to follow her specifically on Instagram. Now, she is all over social media. We'll have links to all. I'll post this as soon as we start talking, or Zana can post her links in the chat. But her Instagram is legendary. She does it all herself too. When you see this, you're not going to believe that she does it all herself. Now, sometimes she has crews filming and stuff for her, but she posts it, she edits it, she does all the heavy lifting. It is so cool. You won't believe that a single person could do this. It's Carrie McCormick Real Estate. So we'll have Zana, if Zana can post a link there. If not, I'll do it here in a little bit. We'll have a link to that, and we'll send that out to you as well. And you can always visit her on our website, carriemccormickrealestate.com as well, which is really a cool looking website. It really showcases how her rise in the Chicagoland market into luxury has just been phenomenal. And everybody here in Chicago knows her as not, and she doesn't only do luxury, obviously. She helps really anyone that she can, but she is really the person that luxury clients go to. She just is, she attracts them, she gets them, and she's going to talk about that today. All right. Carrie, I'm going to unmute you. Sorry. No, you're unmuted. Great. Welcome to the show once again.
Thank you. That's such a nice introduction, and I truly appreciate it. And I think one thing that you said is, and I appreciate that you said that I'm a nice person, and I think people overlook kindness just in general in the world and in our industry. And part of my success is putting ego aside and putting the client first and just being kind, and it takes you a long way.
And not everybody is kind. And I've asked Carrie this over the years because she's so important here in Chicago. I just assume everybody is super kind and nice to her because she's so kind and nice. And she's like, oh no, she's like, you would be shocked at how people talk to me, other agents talk to me in this business. And it blows my mind. So, obviously being kind and nice is really going to be helpful for you, even if it's just to make better relationships. But agents like closing deals with people they like. That's another thing too. But anyway, Carrie is kind and nice and also evident doing this today for us. Again, another big thank you to her. All right, Carrie, let's start. I want to start all the way at the beginning. I know this story, but the audience might not. So tell us, you were in a totally different industry. You were in like the marketing sort of ad world, and you were looking for a change. First of all, let's figure out why, and then how. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I was in marketing. I worked for a company called E-Trade, and this is, going back to the dot-com boom, where it was the one of the best industries to be in, a great company to be in. But I realized, I was a little more rebel spirited than I thought. I don't want to say I'm not a rule follower because it doesn't sound right, but I just like, carving my own pathways and, making my own rules, kind of, as an entrepreneur, right? And when you work for a company and corporation, there's rules that you have to follow. So again, we're going back to the late 1990s. And I was working at a great company, had a cushy job, corner office, great views, and I just wasn't fulfilled. I was obviously very young at the time, but I knew that there was something bigger and better out there for me. And again, having that rebel spirited demeanor in me and wanting to be more of an entrepreneur, I had decided to go out for a walk one day. And it was a walk because something was going wrong at my job. I don't remember what it was, but I was just feeling anxious. I got up and I left the office for a walk. That my office was in the Aon building, excuse me, and I ended up walking all the way to the West Loop. Upon my arrival in the West Loop, they were doing construction, and I walked up to the construction site asking what was happening. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's diggers, there's activity going on. They're building a building, and of course, my curiosity, just led me right to the gentleman. His name was Tom, and I asked him, what were they doing? And excuse me, everyone, I'm getting over a cold. And Tom proceeded to let me know that they were building a residential building. And of course, being rebel spirited, I disagreed with Tom. I said, no one's going to live in the West Loop. I don't know why you're even building here. And, we had this nice banter back and forth. And Tom had asked me, are you in real estate? And of course I said, well, yes, I am. I'm in real estate and I know what I'm talking about. And, um, he's
And
like,
you were not in real estate.
but I wasn't in real estate. So Tom said, I'd love to meet with you at my office next week. And we set up a day and time for me to meet with him. Well, of course, I scurry back to my office, realizing that I just fibbed to this gentleman that, I had my real estate, or I was in real estate. So I quickly got online and I looked up how to get my real estate license. I signed up immediately for the class. When I went to go meet with Tom the following week, I did obviously tell him that I said, Tom, I just want to, tell you the truth. I do not have my license, but I am signed up for the class, so he kind of took that as, appreciated, that I kind of cleared the air on that. But also he was completely fine with me. He's like, that's fine, just finish the class, but I want to talk with you. So we sat down, I was at his office for hours and we went through floor plans and we went through different things. And at the end of the meeting, he said, I want to hire you. I want you to run the sales of this new building. And keep in mind, I came from a corporate job where I had, a salary, benefits, everything that a big corporation would offer somebody, but I knew that this was my opportunity. I knew this was my calling. And I took a leap of faith, and here we are.
Yeah, I love that. This idea that you can go somewhere and talk to someone and then figure out how to solve the problem of, oh gosh, now I have this appointment. And it's a great thing to take a chance. And you did that, and here you are now all these years later. So let's talk about how you got started. So everyone gets started with zero clients,
Mhm.
zero idea of how they're going to survive, and also probably a lot of fear, right? And I know certainly I talk to new agents almost every day. and people who just get their license. And I always ask them, what are you most scared of? Because I always think that's kind of the most interesting thing. And it's usually the one question, it's leads. It's how do I get leads? How do I grow my business? Obviously, that is everybody's concern because leads, I always love this expression. But I heard Brian Tracy say it. He goes, leads solve all problems. And I think that's pretty true. I don't, maybe it's not all problems, but it certainly solves the problem of how to stay in the business. So let's talk about leads. Like, how did you, when you started, how did you sort of find business?
Yeah, so, my career is 25 years and it was split up into two different segments, I call it. So the first decade of my career, I was in development. So just like that story, I worked for the developer and we did that building in the West Loop and we continued on to several other buildings. And then from there, I was recruited with to some of the other major developers here in Chicago. So for the first 10 to 12 years of my career, I was on the development side. And I learned a tremendous amount of knowledge and information through that experience. And also keep in mind all of these people that I interacted with for 10 years, right? I'm selling a tower and people were coming into the sales center. I built an incredible database. Um, my career changed in really the pivoting of the 2008 crash, right? So the market crashes in 2008, and that lasts a couple of years. During '08 through, I think it was like 2011-ish, I still worked with the developers because we had to, redefine the business and get out of a certain things. But then I went into brokerage around 2011, 2012-ish. It's hard to even think back that far. And that's where really my development expertise came into place because I had all those leads, right? I had already built 10 plus years of clientele. So I feel like I was lucky that I had a little bit of a head start, but it was still starting from scratch, right? And, networking and having a good CRM and following up with people, just those fundamental attributes of what we do was so important during that time.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to talk about developers because this is something that you, even though you work with, individual home buyers and sellers and not always for the developer, you are chosen to work for developers even today in luxury buildings and all sorts of projects. I live in one of your developments. Chicago's not a small place. And it's funny, the reason I live there, I like Carrie so much that I was like, I want to support her because she said, I have this new development. This is 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. She says, why don't you come check it out? And I was like, okay. I really didn't have any intention of buying anything. And I walked into the showroom and I was like, oh, I want this. And so I happen to live in one of Carrie's developments. So how funny is that? And it's was one of the best purchases I ever made. What a cool development that I get to live in. But Carrie gets chosen for these. And yes, she started her career doing that. But there's a lot of agents that would like to break into that market. It is not an easy market to break into. You are up against some real heavy hitters because, of course, developers, they just want their stuff sold for the highest price possible. And they want somebody that really knows what they're doing. But I would love, Carrie, if you had any advice for somebody who's like, I want to get into development. I want to get to work with developers and get chosen. What are some of the ways that if you were starting over, you might, approach that?
Yeah, it's funny when you say starting over, it's such a daunting word to think back, 'cause my brain automatically goes back to all of the hard work and the road, through where I've gotten today. But what developers want is, someone that does have a wide network, right? So to work for these developers, they want you to be able to pick up the phone and call anyone and everybody that you know. So they also want you to be an advocate for that development, right? And for you to believe in that and be able to be more boots on the ground and, get out there and, kind of really be an influencer or a spokesperson for that development. You're the brand and the face of that development. So, again, having deep rooted network, having the social ability to be able to get out and be able to articulate the development and why it's so great. And again, remain focused on that development is super important to them.
And you probably, when you worked for developer initially, you saw probably a lot of realtors come through. You probably got to see what good agents who bring in their buyers, uh, good agents, how they show these properties when they're not representing the development. I'm sure you saw a lot of good and bad. And it probably was a great also learning center for you just to see what are the better agents doing, I imagine.
I still do that today, even when I go on my showings, when I'm with a buyer or obviously, working on the seller side, when agents come in, I'm always learning, right? You always look at other brokers and how they're presenting, how they talk to their clients, how they negotiate. It's a strategy, and you think about, I use it sports as an analogy quite a bit, right? Because like football, like you study the other team's moves, you study their plays, and as a broker, we're all friendly with each other, but, we are competing with each other too. So understanding, how our competitors work and how they perform really can set you apart too in negotiations. And again, just understanding how they work. So it's still, it's an everyday learning curve for me. I'm always paying attention, listening, watching, and learning.
I also wonder too, going back to how to have developers choose you, again, understanding, being an expert in their development, also making sure that they know you have this wide network, and also just being able to show the properties in a way that they want you to show them and be their advocate. There's also this like, well, how do I get in front of developers? Well, Carrie went on a long walk and found one and did that. I've heard of lots of stories like that from other agents. It's not that uncommon, but let's just assume that every developer currently is already working with a top agent. Well, at some point, they might not be happy with that agent, right? Developers are fickle. They're funny. They might blame the agent who they have representing them for things that are unsold just because the price is too high and agent can't maybe control that. So there's times when agents get replaced, they get moved on, or developers like, well, let's see who else is out there. So if I were, again, going out to developers is probably this long process. It's not like you're going to go there, you're going to make your pitch, they're going to go, cool, here's 20 properties to sell. Like that's a dream, that's a fantasy that might happen, but probably not. So, Carrie, would you even suggest going to some of these developers and offering to do things kind of almost like on pro bono at the moment, or at least saying, let me be your backup in case something goes wrong? Or, how would you approach that if someone already has an agent? Obviously, you don't want to take their business away from the agent. We know that that's a no. But what could you do to start a relationship with a developer that's already got somebody?
Yeah, well, I would say bring the developer some business, because that's what they want, right?
There you go.
So you have to always think about, what does the developer want? They want the unit sold, right? And you're right. We never want to step on anyone's relationship, because I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. So obviously be respectful of that. But, there's always, you're right. Things always sometimes, I shouldn't say always, but, things sometimes take a turn, and the developer needs to hire a backup person. And you do want to be that backup person. So communication, staying in touch, providing value when you can. And then obviously bring them a buyer or two or three. They're going to start to see your name again and again and see that you're active in the market, right? And this way you're giving and not asking for anything. You're giving the developer business, but you're not, right there asking. So it's kind of like give, ask,
Right.
so that's kind of my philosophy, is don't always ask for things, but give a few times and then you can ask.
And this is why it's important when you are bringing buyers to make sure that they can close, right? And this has a lot to do with the lender. If it's a non-cash offer, this is a really important thing. Is you if you're going to bring a developer a deal, it really obviously ideally will close. You want that to close. They want it to close, but you also just want them to go, wow, this person knows what they're doing. They get stuff done. Now, obviously, things can happen, and things might not close, but this is where having a good lender is really, really super important. And good lenders can get deals closed. And so obviously that's something that you want to consider. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about working with, traditional buyers and sellers, because I know one thing is you win a lot of listings. You do probably more listings. I haven't looked at your data lately, but I'm sure it's more listings than buy side, although who knows these days. But you do get chosen a lot for listings, and from people who just hear about you who aren't repeat clients. So but you're sometimes up against other top agents. Somebody selling a several $1 million property, it'd probably be in their best interest to get a couple of appointments, right? So that's just going to happen a lot of the time. even though you might be a referral. So when you're up against another agent, or even if you're not, what are you doing in a listing presentation that you think really helps you win the business?
Well, isn't that top secret there, DJ? Do I really want to tell you all that? No, I'm just joking. You know, I don't know what I do different than other brokers, honestly. Like I wish I could sit in on other brokers' listing presentations, right? But I do know that I try to stay focused on the client through the presentation and what their needs are, right? Because listening
Yeah.
to what they want and catering to their needs is obviously the most important. The one thing that I will never do is obviously badmouth another agent, right? And
Mm,
I know that that's happened to me in the sense of like I'll be in an interview and the clients will say, well, we met with a few other brokers and broker X said this about you. And this broker said that you don't do this or whatever, and so I'm consistently having to combat those comments. So I just think that that's not an appropriate thing to do. And I always say like, well, I'm so sorry that he or she, feels that way, but let me, give you let me have the opportunity to talk to you about that and why that's a concern, might be a concern of yours. So again, I try to stay focused on the clients. And it's all results driven, right? At the end of the day, a seller just wants their home closed for the most amount of money, right? And they want service. So my job is to show them and tell them how I can provide a high level of service to them, what I do, kind of a play by play. And I also talk to them about my support staff. So one thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I am an individual agent. I don't have a big team of agents that are out showing. I have what I think the most amazing support team behind me that helps me remain in the field and remain focused. And I have built my business that way because I feel like that's again, giving my clients the best service. And they feel that too, because they feel that when I say it's 100% carry, that's what they get.
And one thing I also know about you is you answer your phone.
I do.
And it's funny because we think, well, everybody does, but they don't. Not everybody does. I've talked to other top agents who have said the main distinction between me and other agents is I call my clients once a week, tell them how things are going, even if there's no news to report, and I answer the phone when they call me, and I anticipate their questions ahead of time. I know you do this because obviously you are just so well respected in this industry, and it is results driven. You don't get those big listings or big buyers without having a big track record behind you. And I want to share, and I'm going to keep this very intentionally vague as to protect the privacy because, but I wanted to share one way that I've known you've gone above and beyond. And I think this is so cool. I'll keep this very, very vague. But Carrie had a deal at one point that was going to close. It was a very big deal and it didn't close at the last minute for whatever reason. And you were representing the seller and it didn't close, and this is like a devastating loss. Like it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this isn't going to close. It was all the way she had done months and months of work, and it just, for whatever reason, it just wasn't going to close, and not her fault. And so she's like, oh my god, I'm going to lose this deal because this client's kind of wacky or whatever. So anyway, she goes, I'm gonna find a creative solution. And she looks for other properties in the area that basically match what this property offered. And she starts reaching out to the homeowners and saying, I have this opportunity for you. I don't know if the buyer is going to be interested. She wasn't representing the buyer, by the way. She said, I don't know, but I have this person and this deal isn't going to close. Do you have another? Can we come and take a look? Now, these are homes not on the market. She literally looked for properties. And like, this is how top agents do it. They don't, they lose deals. Everybody does. And then they say, how can I still solve this problem? And she found somebody right away. The person said, sure, I'll be willing to entertain somebody. Was not looking to sell their home. And then she was able to close that deal. Incredible, right? Now, it sounds so simple, but most agents aren't going to do those kind of things. So I love that you have this creative way of solving problems. And I imagine when you get listings, you often do have to find the buyers, especially in the luxury side, right? Because, we think, well, if we just got a $5 million property, like that's wonderful as a listing agent, but there aren't that many people just waiting for $5 million homes to jump on the market. So you have to actually source the buyer a lot of times too. Isn't that correct? Oh, you're up. You're muted, by the way. Sorry.
That is correct, and I'm glad that you remember that story because that is part of our job as brokers is to always come up with solutions, right? You know,
Yeah.
and I am one if, there's never any problems. There's always, if anyone comes to me with a problem, I've always have a solution for them. Everything can be worked out.
Yeah, I
Everything,
love that. What I was curious too, like when you get luxury listings, it's not always as simple as throwing it on the MLS and making sure there's a cool website for the property. And it's more than that. You're calling agents who have clients who are in that space, and you're saying, "Hey, I got something you got to come look at." That's something that a lot of listing agents never think to do.
right. No, I mean it's a different market when you deal with the luxury, just from everything how you handle the listing to marketing the listing to your narrative about the home, everything is just very different.
I have a question about work life balance because you are so incredibly busy. You don't have this team, even though people probably assume you do because of your production size. Like here in Chicago, the agents that do the kind of deals that Carrie does, most of them have these giant production teams. Carrie doesn't have that. She has support teams. She has amazing people on her team, but she's the rainmaker. She's doing the work and she answers the phone and she is busy and she's a mom and she has family and a husband and, her own life as well. How do you deal with work-life balance? I know that's probably a challenge, but what is it that you do? How do you think about that? Because a lot of agents are going, oh gosh, I hate those 10 p.m., text messages from clients.
No, it's tough. I mean, there's no easy, there's no magic solution to it. It's not easy, so I don't want to say I don't even think that there's really a good answer for work-life balance, honestly, and
Yeah.
yes, I have two older children now, two young adults, we'll call them, and a husband and, extended family and friends. And, I do try to segment my time in my day and prioritize, but I feel like I've got such a well-oiled machine. And when I'm with my family, I'm extremely present with my family. And, when I work, I'm the most efficient person at work too. I feel like I can get 10 things done in 2 minutes. It's just the way that my brain works. So, it works for me, but everyone's got to find their own thing.
Yeah, and you are willing to put in a ton of hours. And that is something that is just, if you want to get to the top of the mountain, I don't see another way to that. It's kind of like getting strong in the gym. You're just going to have to put yourself in the pathway of extreme physical pain if you want big muscles, or if you want muscles and you want longevity and you want good health. It's like you got to be willing to do the things that most agents aren't willing to do, which is work.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying most agents don't work, but work maybe more effectively, more efficiently, plan your day, those kind of things. I want to switch gears and ask about client relationships. So you work with somebody, you find them a home or sell their home,
Mhm.
and then, they're probably not moving for a while. So what are you doing to stay top of mind or back of mind so that they remember, in 7 years, 10 years, whenever they need you again, that you're still the person that they want to reach out to?
Yeah, I think, client retention and client outreach is super important. And I think all of us do have a challenge with that because, our job is multi-functional, meaning, we're trying to get business, we're trying to retain our business, we're trying to follow up with clients. There's a lot to it. Obviously, maintaining a good CRM is important. I've got a list and I try to, when I say try, I really try to, reach out to clients, every, 6 months, if I see anything on socials, great. If you see if someone's having a baby or a wedding or, anything change in life of reaching out and acknowledging that, I think that's important. Just even mailings, keeping someone in your email or, your newsletters is important. I try to do mini events every, once or twice a year and invite people to the events as well so we can see each other face to face. What I'd really like to do is to do one-on-one coffee and dinner, but I don't think there's enough time in the world to do all that. But that's
Yeah.
one of my goals for this year.
Also, I want to talk about having a network of ancillary, I never can ever say that word right, ancillary people that you can refer when your clients need a service. Could be
Yes.
everything from estate planning,
Yes.
could be, attorneys, it could be accountants, it could be people to fix a roof, or, people who can redevelop a property or do renovations. So how important is it for you to have that network, and how often are your clients reaching out to you going, I need your help? And I assume that's a huge deal for you, because if you become that knowledge source, then
Yeah.
hopefully they continue to use you. But how important is having that team?
No, that's extremely important. And it's grown over the last, 20 years of my career. And it's changed because, service providers change as well, right? Their level of service, or if they don't service my clients, I'll move on and find somebody else. So I think I've got a great team of people, but it happens all the time. And just a quick funny story is a client of mine called me at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And of course I answered the phone because I was a little worried. But they said, "Oh my gosh, we have a leak. The shower is leaking. It's leaking in our ceiling." And I'm thinking, like, why would you call me? Like, like I haven't talked to you in a few months, but like, why would you call me? Call a plumber, but it was, I took it as, of course I helped them. I got them a plumber and we got it taken care of. But it's funny how that I'm the first person that they call, especially in an emergency. It's like, you need to call the plumber, you need to call, your HVAC person. But I'm happy to be a resource, and I know people sometimes freak out when things happen, so they are looking for someone to calm them down and find a solution for them. So I'm happy to do that, but I'm kind of daily the first call if something goes wrong.
So I'm going to ask a question about being a listing agent and receiving offers from buyer agents, only because I want to know what, you do a lot of listings. What is annoying about receiving offers? In other words, when are there agents that aren't really making it easy for you to interpret the offer, to present the offer? And what are agents doing that you're like, I love it when I get an offer from this person because they just make it so easy. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, are there little do's and don'ts when you're dealing with, because you want, as a buyer's agent, you want the list agent to like you. It helps well, maybe you don't want them to like you, but I would assume you'd want them to like you. um, but at least when you're submitting offers, I hear all the time right now, people are saying, gosh, my offers are just getting outbid, I'm not hearing back. So what are some of the things you like to see from the buyer agents when you do get those offers?
I think it starts with the showing, honestly. Before you're going to make the offer, I think, it's kind of like the pre-interview, right? At the showing. So, if a broker's coming in and he or she wants to be very combative during the showing and, start questioning things, and if the buyers are, nervous Nellies and they're questioning, the integrity of the home or something, it's kind of like you kind of have a little bit of an idea of the personality that you're going to get with this deal. So I always think, again, if it's something that you and your client want, try to be on your best behavior, especially with all of the Ring doorbells and cameras in people's homes. Sellers are watching. If you're going to say something derogatory or negative about the client's home, just don't say it.
Wait
So
until you're in your cars.
wait till you're in your car, because there's been plenty of times, like my sellers will say, like, "Oh, I overheard them walking out saying that they hate my what, my furniture or something, and it just is like, and then we get an offer from them and it's like super awkward. So I think just be on your best behavior during the showings, number one. um but just to answer your question, I think when you send an offer over, I think it's really professional practice to call the broker. you know,
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and call and say, good news, I've got an offer coming in. Let me tell you a little bit about our offer. Have a dialogue, have a conversation. And when you send the offer over, it's great when it's completed. I cannot tell you how many times I get offers that they misspell the seller's name, they miss signatures, they ask for, things to be included in the home, but they bury it in the contract. So like you're kind of like they're trying to sneak it in, and in their summary they don't list it, and it's just I think just being thorough. I mean, if
Yeah.
I feel like is that too much to ask? I mean, we're filling out a contract, so just make sure that it's accurate and things are spelled correctly.
It's funny about the phone call is I know lots of top agents, and I always ask them, when you get offers with your listings, the agent calls you, right? And they're like, most of the time, no. Most agents don't pick up the phone and call, which is shocking because the main reason that I've heard, or one of the main reasons that might not occur to people, is the other agent is maybe now thinking, if you don't call, how serious are you about this deal? How committed are you to this industry, right? Like, if you're not doing this for your client, what's going to happen 10 days before closing? Like, are you in? Are you in? Are you not in? So I think that is also just a good reason, is the agent is going to be impressed, even though you think, I don't want to bother the agent. They're getting a million calls. They might not have time to call you back, but they certainly want that call. They certainly want that voicemail. They want somebody that's like, my client wants this property. I want to figure out what can we do to make this happen. Please, like, I know you're getting a lot of offers. Don't let me, fall away. And then you just keep calling, in a polite way, in a way that's respectful and not over the top. But, just little things like that, like what you're saying is, make a summary. Like, that's another thing that a lot of people don't do, is they just send over the offer. And it's like, now I have to read through every page and every single thing and look to see if you're trying to sneak something in. Right. So that makes a lot of sense too. So simple things. But I know Carrie is going to go here in just a moment. So we have just one question that our team wanted to ask our listeners. One is, what should I look for when I work with a developer? Like, are there red flags to look out for? I'm sure you don't say yes to every development that you get pitched. So what are some things to look out for to make me think, oh, maybe this isn't the right match?
I think that just, as a salesperson and representing a development, you want to make sure that you believe in it, right? And um, you like the developer, number one, you like the location, and you like the products. I think that's much easier to sell when you truly believe in the product. If you walk into a developer's product and you're like, oh my God, this is so cheap. He or she is not going to finish a punch list. Like, they're just like, screw the buyers kind of attitude. You do not want to be associated with somebody like that, because that is your reputation as well, right? You're spending time to promote this development. So just make sure it's a product that you believe in and you have a good relationship, sorry, with the developer, that he or she is going to follow through on the product.
That's great. Well, Carrie has a cold, and she has been so sweet to fight through this. This is her still in the first week. Those nasty colds going around that we all have seemed to got. She's in the middle of that. So, again, another yay for Carrie. Another cheers for Carrie. But again, this isn't the end for her. She's going to be on our show next month. We're going to be doing our monthly episode with Carrie McCormick. She is amazing. It's crowd favorite and a fan favorite. So do her a favor, follow her on Instagram. And by the way, if you're not in the Chicagoland area, she has deals that leave Chicago. She has people that move. She has people that get second homes other places. And of course, she would love to talk to you about the people you have that are entering the Chicagoland market. So she is somebody that is very sought after, and she does her due diligence. So if you're reaching out to her, make sure that you have a lot of value to offer, because she has a lot of value to offer you. But she would love to connect with you. So you can find her on Instagram, right, which is at Carrie McCormick. Sorry, Carrie, I just lost your thing here.
McCormick Real
At
Estate.
Carrie McCormick Real Estate. Sorry, at Carrie McCormick Real Estate. It's in the chat, so you can reach out. We have a link to it at the top of the chat there. And also, let's give your email, because you answer emails too.
I do. So it's a very simple one. It's Carrie, Carrie, at atproperties.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Carrie, we will let you go heal and get better. And also, you don't really get to rest because you have so many deals that you do. So you are trudging through as always. And we just love that you make time for us every
Thank
month,
you.
and have been for almost every year I've been here. So thank you, on behalf of the audience and on behalf of Carrie. We thank you. We're going to let everyone take a quick break. Carrie, thank you. And by the way, I'm going to be putting up that link again. I have this new segment I want to do on the show where I help you solve your real estate challenges. So I'm going to have a QR code link. Feel free to sign up for a quick 15-minute meeting with me so I can help you and give you some ideas. I did one of these earlier this morning, and the person had a really interesting question. She was like, I have a bunch of clients. She works with Hispanic clients. She said they're really nervous about deportation right now with the political climate. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess that makes sense. So I had an idea for her. And then she also had a question about I can't seem to get myself to do videos, social media videos. So we had an idea, a conversation about how to do that. Kim Ritberg, by the way, is coming on in a few hours. She's going to tell you about all about that. But for now, feel free to do that. I'll put the link here or the QR code, and we will see everybody at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.